very good evening to all of you. On behalf of ED Brand Equity and CleverTap, I extend a very warm welcome, and I once again welcome you all to the Big Leap Rise with Retention Roadshow Bangalore chapter. I'm Sarita Raghuvanshi, your host for the evening. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Bezos had once said, "We see the customers as invited guests to a party, and we are the hosts." It's our job every day to make every important aspect of the customer experience a little better. ET Brand Equity and CleverTap have joined forces to bring the most comprehensive and the biggest ever program in customer retention domain, the Big Leap. The program is widespread over the next 6 months and will host exclusive interviews, multiple city roadshows, digital dialogues, networking events, and informal meetups with India's digital pioneers. Today, at the Rise with Retention Roadshow, as presented by ET Brand Equity and powered by CleverTap, we will deep dive into our customer journeys and how brands can create customized solutions to retain them. And ladies and gentlemen, I'd also like to take this opportunity to inform you all about our social media hashtag, which is the hashtag Big Leap and the hashtag Retain to Gain. And you can catch the live updates on the ET Brand Equity and the CleverTap official handles. To formally welcome everyone and to set the tone for today's evening, I would like to invite on stage Tapan Acharya, Senior Vice President, Meta and India, CleverTap. Tapan has been in the industry for over 2 decades, working in various roles as a developer, consultant, product marketing, and CXO for organizations including IBM and Microsoft, to name a few. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for Tapan. Over to you, Tapan.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to see a packed room. Great to see everyone here. And I was lucky to reach early. There wasn't much traffic today, and I was talking to all my fellow panel members later in the day today, and I remembered Socrates, which I said to Gautam also, that I know nothing. So fantastic to have you folks here. And the reason I said what I said is I was looking at the scale, and I just want to little bit put optics around the scale. So I was talking to Games 24/7. I'll take company names. I was talking to Games 24/7. And I came to know that their games have been played 2.5 billion times. That's twice India's population, just FYI. And number of teams have been formed on their platform is 500 million teams, which is massive. I was talking to Unicards. They said that in the last 8 months, they've had kind of 1/10 of Singapore join their platform. And just FYI, the population of Singapore is 5 million. And I was talking to Pratilipi, and they provide content in 12 languages. And just FYI, in India, there are 750 languages, 19,000 dialects, and they have approximately 20 million plus users who are reading on their platform. Just FYI, population of Australia is 25 million. So the scale of this medium is unformidable. The mistake on one campaign, you could annoy an Australia population. You could annoy half of India's population. That's the scale we are talking about. And when I learned about the numbers, I was talking to the Good Glam group, and they said that their content on Insta and various platforms is viewed 200 million times in a month. That's 8 times Australia. In India, there are 82.2 million taxpayers. That's 2.5 times taxpayers of India. It's a massive problem to solve. So I want to very clearly, I understood, and I have seen this in the past as well, that the scale of this medium is massive. The problem statement definitely becomes is you have to personalize at scale. Now, I just want to quickly bring this slide, and I just want to talk about all of us. We approximately unlock our phones 150 times in a day. 1/3 of our waking time we spent on mobile phone, which is, if we are awake for 15 hours, cutting across sleeping and other things. 5 hours a day we spend on the phone. By the way, some of us get paid for a 9-hour shift. So 5 hours a day is what we spend on the phone. And it's actually our lens to the world. It's our lens to the world. There are customer journey maps. These maps are a part of our muscle memory. It have become, they are habits, they are ways for us to entertain, ways for us to shop, ways for us to, consume journeys. And the only two things which we don't have, which we don't want to give it to anybody else, is attention span and time. So the problem statement very clearly becomes is hyper-personalization scale. And a lot of times, we were asking this question that what's your monthly retention rate, and you will, get to hear this a lot in the discussion today. It is also driven by the 2190 habit rule. You must know that if you're doing something for 21 days, it becomes a habit, and if you are doing it for 90 days, it's like you can't leave it. While on one side we've spoken this, a little bit of reality check is we use, a lot of other players also use about 90% of users in 3 months. So let's look at the dichotomy. On one side, you're spending money to acquire customers, but then on the other side, you're losing them in 90 days. So it's like your cost for acquiring a customer, or CAC, is straight away going to bonfire. And hence, number one priority becomes retention. Many people have said this, and we all know this, but just to quote some of the big ones, is it is more profitable. What percentage more profitable? What percentage more, it is expensive to get a new users. We know that it's a part of, because we are all in business, and you would be knowing that very well. What comes as a very important point is how to retain users. And in a nutshell, what I was talking about, the more and more we can be in the context, personalized for the user, the more retention happens. The context could be right time, right place, right channel, right content, because that's what it means to you, because your device is your lens. That's how you're experiencing the emotion there. And when I said two things which you don't have is the time and attention span, we all are supposed to play so many roles. I'm an employee to someone, but I'm a father to someone else. I'm a husband to someone else. And I need to consume all those emotions and fulfill all those journeys, and my lens is my device. So in the right place, at the right time, with the right content is a very, very important aspect of it. The world has been doing it in the past, and it is more on the right-hand side. The way they've been doing it is they take data, put it in a space, they analyze it in some other space, they segment it in another space, and they engage the users in a different space. So either the data gets outdated, or you don't respond in time, or you waste huge amount of manpower in import-export. However, there has to be an approach, and how the CleverTap does it is that everything is integrated on the same database. In fact, yesterday we launched a proprietary technology, our database called Tesseract. The good thing about that is it's an in-memory database, so it's very fast. For example, you have to send 20 million notifications in a minute, blip, it gets done. So just moving on from here, just to mention also that we've been doing things at internet scale. We are in 3 billion devices of the world. The population of the world is 7.3 billion people, and which is approximately 50% of the world. We are on 10,000 apps and many large, great brands with us. With this introduction, and I am glad that Gautam and other folks entrusted me to set a context for this discussion. I wanted to start with two contexts. One is the scale of this medium is massive, and the name of the game is hyper-personalization at scale. With that, I move back to you. Thank you very much.
Context, and thank you so much for that wonderfully insightful presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, I sincerely hope that everybody out here is following hashtag The Big Leap, and please do not forget to post your selfies, also your networking moments with the industry peers, and we promise to retweet you. Catch the live updates on our official handles, which is @ET Brand Equity and @CleverTap. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we now move forward to our most awaited session for the day. The session coming up next will focus on decoding customer retention strategies. Traditionally, brands have always focused on acquiring new customers in order to scale. The modern growth journey of digital brands doesn't end at user acquisition. Join me in welcoming our esteemed panel as they uncover the need to keep users engaged and hooked onto their platforms to unlock the true growth. I would now like to invite on stage Tapan Acharya, Bhavish Singhal, Chief Growth Officer, Good Lamb Group. Bhavish comes with extensive years of expertise in business growth, customer and revenue management. In his previous stint, he led revenue and growth for large organizations, including Myntra and MedLife, among others. Vanda Farao, Head of Marketing, Fresh to Home Foods Private Limited. As the Head of Marketing, Vanda is fueling growth by creating a strong brand image and building relevance for consumers to buy online. In her previous stint, she has worked as a marketing leader for established organizations. Rahul Bantia, Head of Retention and Revenue Growth, Games 24/7. Rahul is working on providing the most engaging gaming experiences to the players and is also responsible for Rummy Circle's growth agenda by leading the revenue and user retention teams. Shelly Modi, Co-founder and Product Head, Pratilipi. At Pratilipi, Shelly has donned many hats, from author engagement to marketing to design to partnerships and to finally spearheading product. She has previously worked at DHL and Vodafone India. Jitesh Gandhi, Head Product, Unicards. Currently heading product for Unicards, Jitesh has built the team and product from scratch and has been successful in scaling it to millions of customers. In his previous role, he had product for SWBL in Dubai. Gautam Srinivasan, Senior Journalist, our session's moderator. Gautam's expertise in editorial and branded content spans an 18-year journey with leading media conglomerates in Asia. He also anchors a variety of TV shows, digital shows, and events on enterprise technology, personal finance, education, health, and economy for corporates and businesses and business media networks. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for our panelists and our moderator.
Well, thankfully, I found a seat. I was wondering, when I will get a seat. And thankfully, the long introduction served the purpose of finding a chair there. So I guess we have a bit of a reorganization happening before the conversation has even begun. So that makes things a bit interesting. And I noticed the claps are kind of weak. We are in an evening, I realize that. But let's get the energy pumped up. I don't know how many cricket fans there are, but if you're wondering about the score, I think we're going at the rate of 10 per over without losing a wicket. That's a good sign, India versus South Africa. So you can be in a cheerful mood. And I realize we have a tall order. An evening post 6, a conversation of an hour. So I think the biggest challenge is going to be for all of us to retain all of your attention. So let's see if we are up to it. We have a fantastic, stellar panel, all of whom brimming with insights, brimming with stories, and I'm sure some of their inputs will probably make you think and wonder, well, maybe I should try this out in my own enterprise. But to kick things off, if the customer comes first, the customer will last, right? It's a simple sentence, a simple idea. But the mechanics behind it, the nuts and bolts behind it, that has so many twists. And as any journalist would tell you, for any story, right, you look at the who, what, when, where, why, and how. So before I kick things off, first let me check from the audience. Are you ready to listen to this story? Yes. A loud yes will reaffirm our faith that, people are listening. But thank you so much for that. And all right, so let's start with the who. Who will you be listening to? Well, as you can see, we have a galaxy of leaders, all of whom come from very, very exciting brands. And we are going to hear from them their lessons in excellence, which enabled all of them to take that big leap from treating customer satisfaction merely as a sort of a rating to engineering loyalty for the brand. Their introductions have already been made, so I'm not going to repeat it. I'm going to kick things off by taking a page from Karan Johar's book. We're going to have a rapid fire Q&A, and then we'll kind of get down to the brass tacks, ease you in gently into this conversation. So let's start with the first question, which is, if you had a limited budget, right, and you have to make a binary choice, retaining customers, acquiring customers, what do you do? Jitesh, we'll start with you.
For Unicards, the choice is clear. It's definitely retention, but to put things in holistic perspective, depends on the stage of the company you are in. If you are in the 0 to 1 phase where you're still trying to establish product market fit, growth becomes very important. But once the product market fit is established, the presentations and the Excel numbers needs to hold the ground, right? So retention becomes super important. Also, some leeway can be given to companies which are trying to shape customer behavior. For example, Zepto, right, trying to shape customer behavior, right? So there, again, growth becomes more important. So that's how.
All right, a very safe answer. Let's see if Vanda has something exciting here. What would you say? Retaining customers, acquiring customers? Binary choice, you have to make one choice.
Yes, Gautam, you've said, if you have limited budgets, like who has a lot of budgets anyways, right? Like, do our bosses really tell us, okay, this is a blank check? All of us have, we have limited budgets. And when you have those budgets, what is bang for the buck is what you do. And I think these are the times when we're really, really getting more efficient. And if your situation is a hypothetical one, and depending on the business model, that depends whether, it's a leaky bucket and you want more new users, or, you want to conserve your budgets and just work with what you have. For my business, I can tell you it is retention by far, because the consumers who have bought you, they understand your brand, your proposition. So it's far easier, right? You have CRM channels right now, SMS, PNs, to reach out to them and nudge them to make a transaction. So when it's a binary choice, for me, it's retention.
All right, retention, getting all the votes. Tapan, you said in the initial this thing, as Socrates, quoting Socrates saying you don't know anything, but I'm going to force an answer out of you.
Gautam, it is very surreal to be interviewed by you. I've seen you on the medium, and in reality getting interviewed by is a surreal experience, so I'm a little scared. So there is a circle of influence. It's like positive experience generates positive sales, generates positive experience, generates positive sales, generates positive experience. And of course, that circle of influence, a happy customer, a retained customer, automatically, not just from a profitability standpoint, but anchors to get more and more customers as well. So by and large, retention is of course the answer. However, I would also want to mention a second answer, and as already said by Vinda, is that it doesn't make sense to put your cost for acquiring a customer in the bonfire, because you're acquiring customer if it's a leaky bucket. So I would 100% go with retention.
All right, before I say lock kiya jaye, let me hear from the audience, a poll, a quick poll between acquiring customers and retaining customers. If you have limited budget, what would you do? Acquiring customers, how many hands up? Oh, okay, I see 5 or 4. Retaining customers? All right. So everyone agrees. This is not exciting. I think when we see evening news debates, we see all that conflict. Let's see if we can generate conflict more as we go on. All right. The single most important measurement of customer retention, what should that be in your business? Rahul, what would you say?
Right. So I think the single most important measurement for customer retention in any gaming business like ours, right, would be to understand how much our users are really enjoying the game that they're playing, how engaged they are on it. And the only way to do that is to provide them with the best personalized, most immersive experience that when they're playing those games.
So if I had to add jargon to this, with all these monthly active users, daily active users, click-through rates, and all these things, if you have to name one metric from a jargon perspective, what would that be?
In terms of metrics, the two most important metrics that we track very, very deeply are retention rates and ARPUs, or average revenue per user.
All right.
These two really determine how much your users are liking your product, how often they're coming back, how many games they're playing, how much they're willing to put their time into this, right? And this really determines how satisfied they are with the product.
All right, Bhavesh,
Very similar, but coming on e-commerce.
you need to put your mic closer.
Coming
so
on
that the
e-commerce
phone-
background,
That's too
I think
loud.
the first metric is NPS, and the second metric is 7-day retention. So we work on a beauty, which is an impulse category. So if customer like your product, will come back and buy in 7 days. So that's really good.
All right, this is all a content lineup, games 24/7, good glam group, content to commerce. So Shali, let me come to you, as India's largest UGC platform for literature, what would you say?
Just for the understanding of everyone, Pratilipi is a storytelling platform. So users come and they read stories on our platform. These
We
are
need to be a bit louder. I know words have the power to cut through, but
this format of reading is more of a fiction reading. These are multi-episodic stories, and for us it is almost similar that a finished story read per user is what we track. On a North Star basis, we track stories read per month because that defines the engagement as well. So,
stories read per month.
yeah,
Okay.
so currently I think we are right now serving around 400-500 million stories read a month.
400-500 million
So
stories.
average user who has finished reading one story on Pratilipi, they on an average tend to spend around 60 minutes on the app per day.
Wow, 60 here, folks will be happy if 8 to 10 minutes here, we are talking 60 minutes of attention. Let's see if we can have 60 minutes of attention here, but thank you so much for your viewpoint. Tapan, your thoughts on this, the single most important metric, considering you're the world's preeminent cloud retention platform.
Gautam, you're scaring me further.
I was just waiting to bring those points out. What would you say?
I think so. Any metric related to habit becomes a retention metric. It could be how often you are using it. It could be divided into the time of the month, time of the day you use it, and how regularly, how many hours. It could be day of the month. It could be the kind of journeys which you are frequently, using. And it could be various things for various industries. For content, it could be separate. For e-commerce, it could be separate. For travel, it could be separate. However, those matrices does add up to the habit metrics, whether it is a part of your muscle memory. It should not be a decision in your head. Our decision-making parameters are generally divided into 3 parts. Either we take a functional decision, economic decision, and or emotional decision. More and more it becomes an emotional decision. More it is a habit, and again, then it is clustered by measuring parameters like daily active users, etc., etc. But everything adds up to how much it is a muscle memory.
Okay. I'm going to take an audience poll again just to check. How many of you are still listening to the conversation? A raise of hands if you could. All right, we are still good. Fantastic, fantastic. All right, let's move on to the biggest game changer in terms of these hidden user trends or something which folks were not looking at, because that's where business success comes in. You have a huge competitive landscape, every player who is employing data, but you see something which others do not. What is that? Bhavesh, how about we come to you for your thoughts? That hidden user trend, considering the universe that you traverse, I'm sure this is going to take a bit of time for you to figure out which was the one you'd select. But if you had to, one.
One thing is make your business a drug, like what Tapan said, right? Fashion and beauty. A woman buy a lipstick, she wants another shade on the same day. So harp on it. Tell the woman that you are great, like Nirma ad, right? Aapki pasand hai Nirma super. So that's exactly what it is. Tell the person that your choice is great and you are great. The person will come to you.
Affirmation is the trick, is it? All right. And you said
I would actually like to little bit go diagonal to that point.
Okay.
It is about, so the problem, I see a bell curve of customers in the market. Everybody is not at the same maturity level. So, and it's not that you have to have your habit hooks at a certain maturity level only. You have to plant it at every place in the bell curve. Because it is all customers. You can't treat a customer special and neglect the others. It's personalized for everyone. So for every, let's say, if you're talking about, let's say, a man or a woman, they should feel that it is personalized for them. And there are habits and segmentation and behavior trends, and the data talks back to you. The way
So there could be a personalized way of affirmation, right? Where you say that
exactly.
you are
That's
doing.
That's the right phrase.
All right.
Exactly same. Like for example, if you buy a Nike T-shirt, and if I can send you a celebrity pic with the same T-shirt, you will be so happy about that buying T-shirt, and you're going to come back on the platform. So
Absolutely. And also somewhere, it's about, to paraphrase, if you've seen the show Mad Men, it's about creating that itch, and then you position your product as a calamine lotion to ease that itch. That at the end of the day is the name of the game. Shali, what would you say to this? Some hidden trend. I mean, 25 million users. I'm sure there must be lots of things which you would have looked at, but as a data-driven organization, is there something which you saw, and considering you operate in a regional space as well, with 12 languages being supported, anything which caught your attention as a trend which others didn't spot?
So Pratilipi is right now in an ecosystem place. So we have not just the literature, we have audio stories, we have comics, different formats of content consumption as well as creation. So one pattern is agnostic, which is, as I told you, right, that we are in multi-episodic. Either you listen to the stories, you read the stories, or you read the comics. These are multi-episodic format. One thing is for sure that you come here to read one particular writer or 5 particular writers, and then the network effect rolls in, where you end up reading a lot of other similar content which we think that is more personalized for you. So personalization or user level personalization, which caters to your need, what you are interested in consuming data or the content, is, I think, is very common across formats. Another thing, while you were mentioning this thing, in the early times, I think in 2016 is when we went live with our Android app for the first time. Almost at that time, the data penetration was not very high across rural India. And a lot of people told us that, mobile pay, people would not write. The long form content so we are a UGC, a lot of people write stories on our platform, and these, on an average, these stories are 1200 to 1500 word long. These individual chapters I'm talking about. So we were also skeptical that we are launching this, but we are not sure if this would drive any more supply side growth, as in more creation would come from this thing. But then we rolled and we realized that we were wrong. In fact, after mobile launch, when we went ahead with, when we gave these capabilities to our writers to write stories on via mobile, we actually saw top line grew by double digit, like consistently. And then we double down on that. Okay, fine, if they are writing these long chapters, why don't we give them the format to write multi-episodic story? And that is how the idea of writing serialized fiction came. Now we see that a lot of people, I think 70%, 80% of our, in fact more than that, of our creation is coming via mobile, where on an average chapter length is 40 plus. So these are kind of trends or user behavior which are very unique, what we had not even, we did not have high conviction would have happened, but the trends are.
So you brought together disconnected content, serialized it, so at the end of the day, the user gets an experience of reading the entire thing rather than feeling, what, this plot point doesn't add up. And if you've seen your television and those Saas Bahu serials which I was talking about, I think that requires this back-end engineering to make sense of the plot points, because I have seen a show for 40 minutes and I can't make head or tail of it, saying what was that all about, and well. But that's again a content experience, a content problem which needs to be addressed, so maybe some inspiration is in store. All right. At the beginning, I spoke about how, as brands, all of you have differentiated yourself by not treating customer feedback as merely a rating. So let me ask a question on that. Is it time that customer feedback is more value driven? The customer gets something in return for the time they spend in giving you feedback. Rahul, would you say that the time is now, from a rewards perspective, a loyalty perspective, maybe there can be a gamified element to that?
So I actually believe that when you incentivize users or give them rewards to give you some feedback, right, you're yourself creating some sort of an inherent bias within that survey, right? You would probably get users who are actually interested to get that reward, and that's why they're answering your questions rather than actually giving honest feedback. So what I believe is, although we do a lot of user research, we do a lot of qualitative surveys to understand hypotheses, understand some insights from the users. But then at Games 24/7, we believe more in actually looking into the user data a lot more to get the honest feedback from the users. So data is the ultimate truth, right? And that cannot lie, right? You get what you want, the best insights from the data that you already have. So I don't really believe in actually rewarding users or incentivizing users for getting feedback. Rather, look inwards, look at your own user data to understand what's the best insight that you can derive from it.
Let me see if the audience agrees with that. Do you agree with Rahul's viewpoint that, don't look at rewards as the only way out, or rather the golden way out for you to connect to customers, but focus on data? Or do you think it should be somewhere rewards based? Without rewards, hands up. Focus on data, don't focus on the rewards. Okay. With rewards, there's a solitary hand up and some hands, slowly coming up. I think somewhere it needs to be incentivized. Vanda, you have finally we have a conflicting viewpoint.
Yeah, thanks Gautam for engineering this conflict. But my point of view is, see, it's always what's in it for me. If I get a survey, like today I got a Myntra survey, and I said, why should I even answer it? It was about the beauty category. I just skipped it. So for Myntra, they have not got valuable insight. So if you incentivize the consumer, right, what you get is you get his time, his mind space, and you get beyond the stated needs. So, from my 17 years in FMCG and startups, while doing consumer research, what you get from answering a question is the stated needs. But you have to delve deeper and understand what is the real reason why he's lapsed out, why he doesn't like a certain thing. So for him to invest that time and tell you, right, you have to incentivize. The business which I am in, we do a lot of new product development. We launch a lot of products. So we have panels, we do tasting, we call people. So they're devoting their time also. From there, we actually get rich insights. In our entire retention survey, we see a lot of lapsers. So any question I send to them will always say that, yeah, because of XYZ reasons. But when you actually, have a group discussion, or, you tell them that I'll pay you for your time, then you actually get the real reason. So I really believe incentivization helps.
All right, for, against. Jitesh, are you somewhere in the middle, or are we going to have a winner here?
So, see, ultimately, it's economics, right? When do you incentivize something when you're not getting enough of it? Currently, the ecosystem we are in, you get so much customer feedback without even incentivizing, right? Three major sources of getting customer feedback, right? Data, as Rahul pointed out, is definitely a great source. Customer care, right? A lot of customers will reach out to you, they have some problem or the other. So customer care is a great way of, getting data. The third great way, especially coming from product background, is we do a lot of voice of customers, where we call customers to, if you launch a specific product, to understand the feedback around those products. Right? And I feel that, especially when you're talking about retention, one thing which a lot of companies, are good at is getting customers. They'll show the world to you and to get a customer insight. But when a customer is frustrated and, customer needs help, you have these all AI, ML platforms, bots answering, customers not getting response. So one thing, which probably company treats, customer care as is a cost center. Versus that, one thing which we've done differently at Unicards is we treat it as an experience center. Companies like us are not an entertaining platform where customers will just come and reach out. They come to us when they're frustrated, right? And they give us the right kind of feedback. And all of us would agree over here that the best experience is when a human voice talks to you and replies with a answer which you want to hear. Right? So that's how, there are a lot of data points, just need to act the right way.
I think so. I think more in sync with what Rahul was saying, but that's okay, Vanda. I support your viewpoint in this. So pretty much even Stevens there. All right, let's wrap up the rapid fire round by looking at, how do you know that your marketing campaign is hitting the right spots, whether it comes to attracting and retaining customers? And one tip that you would share from that perspective in terms of how do you retain customers? So Jitesh, we'll start with you and then go across the panel.
I would take an example and answer this question. So we identified who are our super users, right? Super users are those users who spends on Unicards 2x more than what a normal user would do. And we thought, okay, these are some behaviors which super users exhibit. So let's design a campaign so that every user who comes in, we can make them a super user. So we made a campaign, obviously with incentivization, and when the results came out, we were not that happy. Then we double clicked in terms of what happened. And what we saw is there's a particular cohort of users who are spending 2.5x, not even 2x, 2.5x. We double click further. What happened? So what we realized is that these customers who are sort of spending 2.5x are actually interacting with the campaign which we have built, right? Versus a lot of times customers might have spent, they get a reward and they don't even realize that they've got a reward, because, and especially the difference between a digital product and a physical product is that there's no one to explain a digital product, right? So you need to design your journeys in a way where customers interact with that campaign, right? So that's and once we started doing that, what happened is customers who are not interacting with the campaign are not going to get the incentive, right? So you cut your marketing, whatever budget is by 50%, still get 2.5x the output.
That reminds me, I have to figure out what rewards are left from my card that I haven't availed. Shelly?
So I think we are not much into brand promotions. We heavily focus on performance marketing.
From a retention tip perspective,
Correct,
what
correct.
one tip, which works from a retention
It's
perspective?
ultimately CAC versus LTV. So
Sorry, could you repeat that?
CAC versus LTV. So it's essentially whatever campaigns gives me the highest M6 by M1. Fine.
She just goes down to the data saying, if the data sings, then you're doing well.
As long as the users are retaining and paying us the double down on the campaigns.
And this is what I'm hearing more in enterprise conversation. If the customer might be king, but data is God. So I think somewhere that's playing into this narrative. Rahul, your thoughts on this?
So I think one tip that I would give to anybody who want to retain their customers forever, right, would be keep thinking of ways that you can build trust with your users and maintain that trust, right? Because as I say, like trust is probably the most expensive thing in the world, and for digital brands like us, it's even more expensive because it's not easy that users will trust you because there are no physical touch points. But then I'll just give you one example of what we did at Games 24/7, which actually established a lot of trust with our users. So typically in a real money gaming app like ours, right, you would get users to deposit some money and then they would play with that money multiple games, and whether they win, lose, withdraw that money and whatever they want to do. So to maximize revenues, we would obviously keep chasing or keep trying to improve our deposit metrics, keep asking users to transact a lot more and deposit more often. While we were doing that, what we realized was the pain point was that users were not really trusting us that much, right? There was lack of trust. They were depositing, but after some point of time, we didn't see any improvement in those deposit metrics. What we did at that point of time was we instead asked users not to deposit, but to withdraw their money out of the system, right? It's a very counterintuitive thing to do, but then we actually incentivized them to withdraw their money, and the results were quite surprising. The users who actually withdrew their money came back and deposited a lot more and a lot more frequently after that, right? That clearly shows how much they started trusting us with those deposits that they were doing. I think they clearly knew that if they want to withdraw the money, they can do it in seconds.
If he's allowing me to go out with the money, then maybe I should come back.
That actually improved our retention metrics quite drastically. It's very counterintuitive, but then it's about how you establish that trust time and over again.
But that's the big leap, right, about doing things differently. And I think it's apt to quote the famous dialogue from Diwar, where one person says, "Mere paas bangla hai, gaadi hai, tumhare paas kya hai? Mere paas consumer trust hai." So maybe that works.
Right? 5-6 years back, when no question asked return start, right, it built a huge trust on the e-commerce platforms. It was not there. It was a big risk, right? 30% of revenue got returned. But the people who return and they get the money back, they are like loyal to you. They will always come and say, "I'll try. If it doesn't work, I will give it back. Nobody asking question to me." So that figuring out the trust factor really, really helps.
All right. Vanda, considering Fresh to Home is very active in the social media space, I heard your conversation with Mogambo on YouTube. And it's not just you, there are other leaders in the organization. That's just one part of it. We remember all the ads, the campaigns. So from that marketing perspective, how do you guys make it so good in terms of A, having a message delivered across, and what works in your opinion from your marketing perspective?
I think I'll just take where Jitesh left off. He spoke about digital brands and physical, right? You go to a shop, there's touch and feel, but for all of us in the online space, it's difficult. So how do you instill trust? And also taking about what you were speaking about trust, I think trust and credibility is very, very important. With respect to our campaigns, what we saw is we were very performance focused and we used to see the metrics. But over a period of time, what we realized, if we don't talk about the brand, build trust and build credibility, right? That reflects in your retention also. Because a person has seen a GDN or he's seen a Facebook ad, he's clicked, he's made a transaction, he's not interacted with your brand. So what we did is we started brand campaigns. So we had a campaign with Jimmy Shergill, which was fresh or free. If you are not happy with the product, we will take it back, no questions asked. And now we actually have a campaign with Ranveer Singh, who's a celebrity. He's a brand ambassador. So when you have a national celebrity who's endorsing your brand, and obviously there is trust built. So that's how the campaign came about. And with respect to the marketing campaigns, what we track is we have a regular metrics. It's literally like the stock market. So we see sessions, we see transactions. So then we know how this is actually working, right? So how strong your marketing campaign is with respect to metrics which shift. With respect to retention, what we realize is when we do these campaigns, right, the customers who come in during the campaign period, they have a better lifetime value. So over a period of time, we realize our CAC actually works better with them. So it's performance in conjunction with brand campaigns which actually work is what I believe.
All right, Tapan, let me get you to kind of wrap things up from the rapid fire round perspective. You heard all the viewpoints being shared by our panelists. So from your standpoint, what works, what doesn't from a marketing perspective, and one tip that you could share with the audience when it comes to retention, what would that
Before Tapan starts, right, I want to...
Oh, you have a point to add, sure.
Yes, yes. I think one thing that will help is to figure out what customer really wants, right? And you talked about the NPS data, the customer care data, and actual data of what we did. If we can combine the NPS data and what we did data, for example, I'm talking about e-commerce because I know that, which warehouse it went out to, which product we sent, what's the time of delivery, what was the packaging, right? We could figure out that without even customer telling me that this particular product is lower NPS, something is wrong with the product, go back and check on the product. This particular warehouse is something where there's issues and this warehouse is giving low NPS score. Leave NPS, we can go to source of the traffic also. Like I did a campaign on 50% off or 30% off, it is low NPS because there's something missing in the campaign which we're not telling truth to the customer, right? So one thing that helped really well is combining the NPS data with the inputs that we are giving, to figure out the pain points and the good moments of the customer, and then leveraging that part. So if that happens, that cycle happens to figure out what customer wants from us, what makes the customer happy, and it's harder to get an answer with a survey, or this has come from data only, that really helps.
But it's more like a journey with no destination, right? What the customer really wants, that keeps changing, right? So you have to continually improve yourself. We'll explore that in detail and figure out, considering even shopping habits, considering have become unplanned, right? Earlier it used to be you get ready, you go out, you'll shop, and then you'll come back. But today is an always on shopper era. But we'll get to those points soon. Before that, Tapan, your viewpoint.
It's a very difficult question, and I'll try to answer it from a emotion to logic perspective. So I believe somebody might have invested in a brand, they might have pumped money, but the brand belongs to the consumer. If let's say there's an Apple fan, you say, Apple is my brand. If I use a Bulgari perfume, Bulgari is my brand. It's your brand. And that emotion translates into digital. Now, for a marketing person, it's a very complex equation because his equation is all his matrices are aggregate matrices. Campaign success rate. It's not an individualization matrix. However, a customer looks at individual experience. So the more and more you have insights and you can stay relevant at scale. For example, it could be a story content for Pratilipi. It could be not disturbing the user in a game for games 24/7. It could be having 99.99% merchants per Unicards. It could be, let's say, Fresh to Home does what, 2 million, 3 million orders per month, if I'm not wrong. That's about more than that. That's about more than 100K orders a day. And in every city, in 60 plus cities, if I'm not wrong, 200 plus cities. Massive change in the last 2 years. So 200 plus cities. Now, they have to be staying relevant in every city for every user for that habit. So the brand belongs to the customer. The more and more insight-based campaigns you can launch for customers at scale. For every customer, you are relevant.
All right.
That's the
headline.
That's
Brand belongs to the customer. If enterprise is focused on that, as I said earlier, if the customer comes first, the customer will last. So it syncs with that. All right, that's the rapid fire round. Let's quickly go across the challenges that we face, and then we'll move on to best practices. And I'll come to you, Bhavesh. The question which I was raising, which is that, considering shopping has become a sort of an unplanned activity, it's an always on customer, and they want to shop when they feel like it. So how does an enterprise kind of tune itself to create those magic moments and say that here, as I again mentioned that calamine lotion analogy, you've got the itch, here is the solution. How do you create the magic there?
I don't think you have solved this problem, to be fair, right? If it's solved, we would have been going a different table. But I think the thing is, if I can impulse customer just to browse my catalog, for example, right? Or figure out, so again, it's e-commerce specific, but e-commerce and in beauty is like once in a month purchase or once 15 days purchase. But if I can figure out a way to get you inspired to come on the app, open my website for some reason, like open for the looks, open to ask beauty questions, get advice from a beauty advisor for free. So getting the new non-commerce use case for you to remember MyGram, which is going to the top of mind, will help me when the customer wants a makeup product or beauty product to remember that I have a MyGram app. Without these, I will download the app, I will purchase, and I will not remember I even have that. Like there's so many apps, 80 plus app per phone. So to just get to a non-commerce use case helps. And for short-term push notification, SMS, but there's short-term levers in my mind. It can get you to the platform, but unless you have real content behind it, it's very difficult to get to the top of mind.
And somewhere you're uniquely positioned because you've got content for acquisition of users and data for retargeting. So in a sense that you've got an ecosystem which works to its benefit.
Content also helps a lot in retention for us, right? The same content engine, the influencer is also writing content for beauty, right? Which basically is, I have like 30,000 plus videos for each product I have. So once you buy a product, depending on where you belong from, I can send you the video through WhatsApp. WhatsApp enables that, right? So that really helps in retention for us.
All right. From unplanned behavior, let's also look at it from the perspective of user behavior being unpredictable. Sometimes in a week, suddenly you will see a huge number of uninstalls. So how do you go about understanding what's the issue and then working on, say, reducing the churn? Rahul, your thoughts on this?
So you're basically asking about the spikes and the drops and how do we really manage
One is the basic factor, right? Let's say IPL season is over, right? That would explain to you somewhere that, okay, you see some of this. But let's say during the IPL season, you suddenly start seeing a huge number of uninstalls. How do you go about understanding what's gone wrong and then addressing that issue to reduce churn?
Right. So given the nature of the business itself, right, we do see a lot of these spikes and drops. Some of them are expected, some of them are not expected. Like for example, when COVID happened, the first lockdown, right, everybody suddenly had a lot of time on their hand. And suddenly a lot of gaming apps started to come up. And we also started seeing our metrics triple almost overnight. And we were not prepared for it, to be honest. But it took us just maybe 3 days, 4 days to add more systems, add more servers to handle that load. It didn't take us too much time to be able to actually handle that kind of a load. Even expected spikes, like for example, what happens during IPL on our, say, fantasy sports game, right, My 11 Circle. Suddenly the metrics kind of jump 10x, 15x as soon as the game starts. So we have really good forecasting models. We have a very, very sophisticated data science forecasting model that helps us understand at which time of the day we will see a spike, at like which match we will see a spike, what kind of games people will play a lot more. So we are very prepared because we know exactly when those spikes are coming, right? So even from the marketing side of things, we are exactly sure when those spikes will come, and we are prepared for it.
So prevention is better than cure. That's the approach you take to
On the
solve
other
this
hand, right, whenever there are drops, sudden drops, we've built again very good alerting systems. So whenever there are deviations, positive or negative, right, all the relevant stakeholders, relevant teams would get those alerts, and almost on real time, we exactly know where's the issue coming from, which part of the login funnel or the gameplay funnel is there a drop, and we exactly know how do we solve that immediately as well. So
You have the
typically-
insights coming in.
Yes, yes. So it's all about how much data you can generate, and on real time you can solve those issues, and that really helps you manage those spikes and drops.
All right, game on for data. Tapan, your points to add on this, because this is an issue which many businesses face, right? Sometimes these unexplained spikes which happen, uninstalls, you're wondering what to do. What's your perspective on this?
There are certain lead matrices and certain lag matrices. Every incident has a set of lead matrices. As Rahul said, it could be time of the day, recency, frequency, monetary value. It could be various changes in the pattern, how frequently you've been using, and changes those in those models. It could be different for different industries. For e-commerce, it could be different. For travel, it could be different. Like for example, I've seen many people having a certain shopping habit as well. For example, every day, we have this, like, what do you want to order next day? If you have, so you think about it after dinner. Okay, kal breakfast mein kya khana hai? Ya kal lunch mein kya khana hai? So these habits are aggregated at the back end. The breadcrumbs are aggregated. And as Rahul said, that if you have the right models to see the aggregates and change in pattern, the lead matrices for every industry comes ki this much of uninstall is about to happen. And you have certain preventive gates as well. It could be offers and promos, it could be engagement on a certain channel, it could be just to check whether actually it's not a pattern but somebody's on a holiday, traveling for work, etc. Those patterns are visible. And then with certain kind of engagements, you can prevent that. So for every industry, those lead matrices are there and the models are there. It's very important to have that in place to be able to check.
As the Scouts motto says, be prepared. So be prepared for any change, any eventuality. And
I would disagree. On a lighter note, so I remember when I was working for Snapdeal, and it happened that Snapchat, even Spigel said that we are not very focused on India because Indian users, we won't be able to generate a lot of revenue. And suddenly we saw uninstalls happening for Snapdeal.
You have accidental attribution as well, right? People mistake the brand as some sort of an offensive brand, whereas it was another brand talking. So that's an eventuality you wonder how do you prepare for. But let's say for some factors, let's say which are regulatory in nature, fine, especially for your business. How do you plan for that from a retention perspective? Because things can change from a regulatory perspective, and that can impact consumer behavior, right? The tokenization is one example. Your thoughts on that?
Right. So in fintech, with all the challenges which exist in other business, one other challenge which exists is regulation. And if you want to build a business which stands the test of times, $5 billion, $10 billion, you just cannot operate on the gray side of regulation. You have to operate on the white side. And regulation, especially in fintech, can change things overnight, right? So in this case, and we keep asking this question to ourselves, right? How do we safeguard us? The good part about regulation is it applies to all. It's not like it applies to any one industry or any one company as such. But the bad part is if you are small and you are dependent on a single product to generate majority of your business, then high chances you are doomed, right? So diversification, especially in fintech, is a great way to sort of solve for regulation. Like, let me give an example. HDFC was stopped from issuing new credit cards, but HDFC is a behemoth, right? It didn't affect them. versus a very small example. I don't know how many of you have used Bullet by Jupiter. It's like they used to give small ticket size loans to make scan and pay payment on merchant shops, and and overnight it happened that the way they were doing it was not right, and they were shut down for quite some time. But during this time, one good thing which they kept on doing is they kept engaging with their customers, where they said, why we have gone down. Second, what are we doing to sort of, bring ourselves back up. Third, when are we going to come back? And in case they're meeting, not able to meet those deadlines, again communicating back to customers, and the
Do you
loyal
think that has to be more educative, especially for the space that you operate in, right? Because if spending increases and if a customer feels, oh, I'm going into debt, I'm not managing my expenses well, somewhere the brand needs to come in and educate its customers saying, you know what, you're reaching a level where you need to watch out, why don't you do this? So, it becomes more educative in terms of its communication. Your thoughts on that?
So on this, what I would say is, uh, you know, uh, again, you need how to build customer trust, right? Especially in credit cards. While we are not a credit card, but the problems which exist are multifold, right? Um, they would never remind you at a very. I'm speaking at a very 10,000 feet view. They would never remind you to pay your bill on time, right? They would, a customer doesn't even know where to go and apply for a card. Customer has reward, and 80% of the customers we spoke to didn't even know how many reward points they have. Forget about how to redeem those reward points. Right? And this erodes trust. Right? So there was a and 80% of the customers who are eligible for a card, they don't take a card because they feel that some hidden charges would be applied which I am not aware about, which will affect my credit score. Right? So especially in this industry, so one of our core product principles, whenever we build a product, is transparency. How do you make it more and more transparent? And we very proudly say that if any charge is levied to you without being informed, right, without you being known, that this charge is going to be applied upfront, reach out to us. We will, refund whatever has been. And then if you that's something which we say, call it out upfront, right? So, and here there's a very thin line in what is right, what is wrong, right? Especially, but
The more transparency you enable, the customer trusts you, and therefore your educative aspects fuses in. Fair point. Now we've been discussing tangibles so far. What about the intangibles? Shopping cart abandonment. Nothing to do with your visibility of your website. No problem with your. They just abandon your shopping cart. So Bhavesh, your thoughts on shopping cart abandonment? How do you deal with that?
So I'll talk about a brand, Serona. It operates in female hygiene. It's a leader in the menstrual cup, right? A normal e-commerce would have a 10% conversion, 90% abundant cart, right? It has a 98% abundant cart. And the simple reason is customer doesn't understand the product. It's a product that people don't know how to use. What's the benefit? What's not the benefit? And that's where the journey starts. That's where the real power of journey start. And it's not about offers. It's not about anything else. But it's just talking about the customer's pain point and how the product can help. It's a new category. It's not a category which is very common, right? So we start with a notification, then go to SMS. We actually do calling also here, right? And the calling is no offer. With this hard discussion, zero offer. It's just about explaining the product to customer, right? So it depends on the product, right? Versus, for example, if I go back to my Myntra days, people will put 20 products on the cart and abandon the cart, and then realize they are just shortlisting products, and then shortlisting, and then we actually did 3 years of campaign to wish list, and that helped in people shortlisting in wish list.
I do that.
Shortlist in wish list. Go to cart when you want to buy. So I know what you want to buy, right? So it depends on the company. But I think the reason, like Serona example, is very, very relevant, because most of the time people are not buying is not because of money. Offers is not the answer. It's because either trust, credibility, or they don't understand. They are not like back in 2014 the biggest problem that Myntra had was shoe size. How do I buy, and still, how do I buy shoe online when I don't know the shoe size? The way to solve is, t-shirt size is still, people are comfortable. I still know my t-shirt size. For men. Maybe men's. It's a different shopping experience. But just getting the one thing that happened in Myntra is getting the size same across the brand. Like in a fashion category, if you are 42, the margin of error is 42 plus minus 2 inches. Which is, you are buying 42, you can get a 40 shirt or a 44 shirt. Which we change as a company to 42 plus minus 0.5 inch. Which lead to like 10-11% product going back to the brands because we can't accept it. And huge QC cost, but it improves our returns and improves the experience. So it's very, very specific to brand and not a one answer.
That's always a safe way out for you to say it's in the context of the brand, it's in the context of what you do
context
there.
of what is there, right?
Tapan, an unsafe answer from you, you were nodding your head vigorously. So.
No, I understand e-commerce. I've been running it in my past life. So if you see the entire unit economics of it, a return percentage here and there can just totally put you off tracks. And if the return, because even in RTO, RTV, there are two types of returns, and if your return percentage is changing, your logistic cost will kill you. Also, you have to do the retagging of the product. It's a total different side of the game. So what Bhavish said is absolutely correct. The cart is used as as like kind of a checklist. Then, if you can my wish or your wish list, if you can drive more and more campaigns around the wish list and use that data and run promos around it, and they can observe that, okay, this is the right thing, as well as he talked about the fitment, the margin of error, the brands they get habituated on. You also bought this brand last time, and it is still a trustworthy brand and it fits you well, etc. Those things.
But looking at this whole universe of customer profiles also expanding, right? You're product driven, brand driven, purpose driven, value driven. That's as per some of the reports that I've read. I'm sure that universe is vastly more expansive. How do brands understand which basic needs are critical and that needs to be there, and where the needs are more dynamic, where the brand changes as per customer expectations? Tapan, what would you say to that?
Oh, it's a very difficult question, but generally the brand does have a core ethos or one or two aspects which they definitely know that they cater to. And for e-commerce, it could be different. For example, and let me just come out of e-commerce into cars. Cars is not a product. Cars is a mindset. In the same way, what you wear, what you use, it's a mindset. And the brand generally understand that when you're using a particular brand for clothing, this is the mindset of the customer. It could be also for content, that okay, you're comfortable with a certain language. It could be, and it's a complex metrics because it is not just language, but genre, what kind of content is it, adventure, etc., etc. It's a complex metrics. But then the brand understands that this is what.
But sometimes you might go against the grain of customer truth, right? You would say that this is what we stand as a brand, right? For example, when in the US all those Copernic incidents happen, some brands said, this is what we stand for, we'll support. We know we'll get some customer blowback, but this is what we stand for. So how do brands decide this is what I am? For these other things, I will change according to the customer.
It's a very different question and kind of a crystal ball gazing for me at this point of time. I'd like to pass on this question and maybe reserve my answer and come back to the
All right. Shelly, let me get in your perspective on this.
So you are right. In a way, we can't just always work and act on anecdotal feedbacks from users. Otherwise, it would be disastrous. All sort of feedback you would receive from users. But having said that, we can't just ignore what they are looking for, because that is the leading indicator of how the compounding growth would come. So what we generally do is look at the kind of user experience which is shaping out. So we have a lot of inbound queries coming in. Users who are consuming content, they write to us that X and Y could have been different. So these experiences, these reports, these feedbacks, and then just looking to their behavior from data point of view. That is it actually what building the entire experience, or should we tweak around the experience? So I'll give you one example. I think earlier you were talking about this multi-episodic thing, right? So it was a similar experience for us, that a lot of user used to write that, hey, I want chapter 7, I'm not getting the chapter 8, or previous chapter I'm not able to find. And then we also kind of extrapolated that understanding and behavior from the data, that yes, these people are looking for the same episodes of the same novel, and we are not able to cater them in the personalization or the feed we are serving them on the homepage. So what are we doing? So that is where the proper experience come into the picture, that why don't we just club all this, because at that time it was very sporadic. Few writers were writing episodic stories, otherwise all of them were writing short stories. It was a transformation from short story to long story format content from both ends, consumption as well as creation. So for us at that time to figure out that, okay, this is what users are looking for and this is how we should give out the experience, and then in totality the entire experience would be better.
All right.
So this is what, so not acting on, like, a lot of people would come and, hey, we are looking for this kind of novel, like, fine, we are a UGC platform, we can't provide you that novel, but also again, can we probably drive similar experience for you, a set of users who are there who are looking forward to read non-fiction, right? So that is also a niche which we serve to.
So even if you agree to disagree, there is a value in that disagreement where you learn and tune your capabilities. Perfect. As we come to the last challenge, Vanda, let me come to you. Seasonal marketing. There's less is more, fantastic. There's something to that exclusivity. But how do you deal with seasonal marketing, which, let's say, festival, if I had to use that as a cue, when, say, larger platforms have these kind of large sales on a sort of a weekly, monthly basis? How do you make sure that festival marketing is relevant in terms of retaining customers? What would you say?
So I'll answer this giving an example of, for us, for meat and seafood, right? First of all, how many vegetarians here?
How many vegetarians? Oh, I'll have to.
Really? Okay, I hope I'm not offending you all by speaking
All this
about-
data is being transmitted to Fresh to Home marketing department.
Yeah, I mean to say, they're never going to buy from Fresh to Home, right? So for meat and seafood, right, for all non-vegetarians, it's a very joyous thing. I mean to say, aaj butter chicken hai, like you get so happy, right? So a little bit Fresh to Home, we're the world's largest vertically integrated company. We go to 3,000 farmers and fishermen. We go to 300 coast in India directly. So that's the beauty, because we reach source, right? We have the widest range and assortment. I mean to say, literally, we go to Bangalore, we go to Andaman, so we get the best fish from there and we fly it pan-India. So, I mean to say, our retention numbers are really good because we really sell good stuff. So when we are competing, right, as a fish and meat only player with other players, for example, like Big Basket or Swiggy, where there are festival sales and they're always on discount, how do we compete? We can't be always on. So I'll give you an example. During Christmas and New Year, that's the time where meat and seafood really spikes up because it's winter, there are barbecues and everything. So what we do is we create an activity, a festival during that time, and we do a lot of product launches. Interesting stuff, for example, in the RTC space, we do different kinds of smoked chicken, grilled fish, barbecue range, right? So what we realize during festivals, we become relevant to a wider sort of audience. For example, if you're very happy buying chicken from your, next door chicken seller, you'll never come to Fresh to Home because you have the trust there. However, if you see chicken spatchcock, if you see grilled salmon, right, you have a higher chance of coming. So what we do is we make this a big festival. We do a lot of campaigns and we get a lot of new users in these categories which are relevant. So what we do is we create a property. They come in through this, and then because we've got the hook, right, then we also try through different channels, right? We know the journeys, and then we say, our chicken is really good, our mutton is really good. So once we've got the captive audience, we also upsell. And then we realize is the retention of these people who come during festive is actually much better. So that's how we create a property.
All right, so that nicely segues to the best practices part of the conversation. I know time is getting limited, but I'll take 10 more minutes for this. Do you think that was instrumental, this drive that you mentioned? And because at the end of the day, meats were a niche idea. Buying meats online was a niche idea, and you made it into a sort of a mainstream phenomenon. So, some secrets that you could share as we are talking about consumer trust. Vanda, what would you say are some of the secrets of building that consumer trust, especially from the context of taking an idea from a niche space to a mainstream one? What would you say?
I think that question is about fresh to home, because niche is what we were. Who buys meat and seafood online, right? 95% of the category is unorganized. So we actually started as a niche only. But what has lent to this success, right, is delivering consistent, great consumer experience. There is nothing which retains a customer more or builds trust if you don't consistently give him what he wants. Product, price, quality, delivery, you have to be on it. So what we've done is, as we've scaled, right, it's not an easy process because we sell chilled products. So our shelf life is 2 days. So if we don't sell it, we have to bin it. So you can imagine how much of just in time we are, right? It's never frozen. So you have to predict correctly, you have to source correctly, it has to reach, it has to be processed. So we're literally always on the ball. And if you see in terms of spikes, right, weekends are the times where everyone eats meat and seafood, right? So that is actually around 60% of my sales. So I have to be always geared. I can never make a mistake, else the entire thing collapses. So given all the complexities of this kind of business, right, if you can deliver to customers that I've ordered chicken, it comes to me in 60 minutes of the best quality, in great packaging, at a great price, right, that customer will come to you day in and day out. So I believe delivering a great customer experience is the biggest tool in building trust and building loyalty, and having that customer in your fold.
Absolutely, that's the game. CX, you make sure that you wow the customer every single time, and pretty soon it becomes the new normal, right? As you brought it to the mainstream, ordering meats online is a regular affair right now.
And the pandemic actually helped. I mean to say, one point is, yeah, because safety and hygiene is so important. We were so apprehensive of going to the wet market, which has so many people, right? So that actually was one of the huge accelerators of all online businesses. And I think from a commodity, you're becoming a brand, and you're also things like this actually are tailwinds which actually help you.
I think from an attention span perspective, I think the pandemic also helped a lot of readers, right? They came online because they have nothing else to do. So from your story, from your standpoint, what would you say some of the secrets of building consumer trust, especially again the same correlation, niche idea to mainstream? What would you say, Shalini?
I think the underlying I think the theory is same. As you mentioned, so while I think the first lockdown is where the spike happened really good, then it was more about how the expense. So suddenly we had to set up a lot of extra infra and all of that because we were not ready to serve so many users in one go. That was not the prediction we had done. But then once they are on the platform and the best experience you give them, like what they are looking forward to read, right? And if you cater to the same personalized experience, like next time they are coming, if someone who's interested in reading some niche genre of romance, and the next time they are coming and I'm serving the same kind of fiction story to them, then obviously they are going to come day by day. I think the L curve would really good, right? So I think the same thing, like how do you build trust is essentially so we do not run any rewards, no royalty.
You're purely organic in terms
it's more
of
like if you come, you like reading the stories, you come next day. There are a lot of writers who are writing live fiction. So it's a feedback loop. So if I'm like, you are a writer on Pratilipi, you are writing live stories right now, right? You have written the 67th episode of a story. I'm reading the chapter. The next day I'm writing that, hey, when's the next episode is coming. So you as a writer also gets incentivized to publish more frequently. So it's more of a feedback loop, which closely brings both sides of network effect in place.
a positive feedback loop instrumental in forming
so
consumer
writers
trust.
getting incentivized, it's chicken and egg. So this drives most this side, and this side drives this side.
All right, fair point. Let's move on to, we've been talking about data. How do you tune analytics capabilities to predict what a consumer wants? Maybe they don't even know they need it, right? We were speaking about the iPhone. Nobody knew that they needed an iPhone, but there was a product, everyone saw it, they said, I need to get this. So what would you say to that, Bhavesh? How do you tune analytics to predict a product or a service or whatever for a customer which they didn't even know they needed? But once they experience it, They wonder how they lived without it.
I don't know what analytics, to be fair, but in the sense, out of 100, 5 people know what they want, right? So to give a simple example, if someone buys onion shampoo and that person comes back and buy, 50% people will either buy onion shampoo, out of the rest 50%, 50% buy onion conditioner. So there is a inherent tendency to go towards onion or the same brand, right? So these kind of correlations, something you can estimate with the data. Like what Amazon does, right? People who buy this also buy this. When you look at it, it's very intuitive, but that comes from the data, right? So this is happening with 5% of population doing it by themselves, us reading it and then telling the 95% of people, hey, you bought this, buy this. So this is the easiest use case in my mind. The second big thing, it may not come from the data, it comes from the experience of the people who are building the product. And I've seen that working very, very well, right? For example, regime building in a beauty personal care, right? I'm losing hair and customer doesn't know what they want, right? So the journey for us starts from getting the trust of customer to ask what's the problem the customer is facing, right? It's dry skin, it's dry hairs, hair falling, and suggesting them that this is what should you try, right? And you have to trust the customer that if the products are good, they will buy it again. And assuming that trust, we actually sell less than cost price for the first time.
Yeah, the customer might not know, right? If they have less hair, you could suggest hair fibers, which can be sprayed down, and the customer would think, I didn't even know this was possible. I thought it was either wig or shave everything off. So there's a product idea you segue.
We can take the photo of a customer, tell the exact problems the customer is going to have or is having right now, and then suggest the product that they want.
But that's why your content piece kind of helps, because if a customer is wondering, what do I do in this situation, the content side.
So one thing we did, we asked customers to upload their vanity kit, photo of a vanity to get a free lipstick. And when you see the vanity kit, we could read that, oh, foundation is missing. And then we can go there with that. So it's basically, you have to take the 5% of the customer which is very evolved, read those and apply for the rest of the customer.
All right. Jitesh, what would you say to this?
So honestly, if I would be, having an answer to that, I would be.
You can venture a guess.
So actually that's a very difficult question to answer, and I'll break it down into two parts. When you're going 0 to 1 and when you're going 1 to 10, the ball game is very, very different. 0 to 1 is more 20,000 feet view. Where you can see the problems, the unorganized market, and there've been so many examples, right? Uber, right? Very unorganized market. Education in India was a very unorganized market. Byju's kind of cracked it, right? So 0 to 1 is a very different ball game, and there also once and these markets should have very high addressable TAMs, total addressable market, right? And then probably once you've identified the problem the consumers are facing, then there are ways to experiment, right? Test and learn is a great way before you scale anything, right? It's a very, very effective way of using resources the right way, right? You test 10 things out, you know what's working, and you scale that. So that's how I'll put it across for 0 to 1. For once you've gone 0 to 1 and you're in the journey of going 1 to 10, then you get a lot of data points, and you can fine tune a lot of those data points, to build the right customer experience, right? And like again, I can give you an example. Like I was working for this company, and it will be mostly 1 to 10. 0 to 1 is Unicards, right? Where there were multiple products which we wanted to go out and hit the market with, and we did a lot of experiments, and we figured out 1/3, will work like a charm. And before even we hit the market, we know that we will hit a product market fit because we had done those experiments and we knew that we'll crack it. Giving an example of 1 to 10, I was working for this company, Swivel. It's into mass transportation for emerging markets. And one metric which we saw, especially in mass transportation, people come to a spot, right? And then you sort of take that vehicle, a bus, like for example, right? We saw that as the distance to the station increases, your conversion drops significantly, right? So data is telling you something. So we came up with a very innovative idea that why does the route needs to be static in nature, right? A, B, C, D, E, F. You've been doing that. Why can't you make the route more dynamic basis customer demand, keeping in mind that the time which the customer will take from reaching A to F remains the same, right? A very different way to look at a problem, and that just bumped up our conversions like crazy, right? So that's how I'll put it across. 0 to 1 is very different. 1 to 10 is very different. 1 to 10 is and in 1 to 10 there have been businesses which have been multi-billion-dollar businesses. For example, Prime is Amazon Prime, right? I work for Amazon. So then AWS, again, example of where a company did 0 to 1, established something, basis data, made multi-billion-dollar businesses.
Some good points there. I mean, fail quickly, learn quickly, then deploy. And at the end of the day, it's also that mindset change. When you're presented with a problem, how about you think differently rather than read about it and say, oh, you need to think differently. All right, before we move on to some of the last questions, Rahul, coming to you, the key elements for delivering effective hyper-personalization for customers at scale. We've got a whole bunch of unicorns here. So exponentially growing and growing all of a sudden is all too familiar for all of you. So how do you effectively hyper-personalize that experience?
So I think there are two parts to this. How do you provide the best customer experience? I think the best way to do it is to personalize it to each user, right? One, you'll need to really understand what kind of data you generate from your users. How do you store that data and leverage that data in the best possible way? And two, how do you automate these things at scale, right? So on the first part itself, at Rummy Circle, on a daily basis, we generate close to 10 terabytes of data, right? We generate data around every click that every user has made on the platform, and we use that data then to personalize everything on their product journey. In terms of the campaigns, the marketing campaigns that we do, we slice and dice data based on multiple metrics, hundreds of metrics, so that every promotion, every campaign, every product journey is personalized to each user, right? And that really helps us to kind of give the best gaming experience to any user on the platform, and that helps improve retention overall.
So somewhere you are already set for that game, considering that volume of data which you are getting.
Huge amounts of data, and it's all about how do you use that data, right? You also need a very good automation tool to be able to like set up those campaigns and reach out to the users, provide the best experience over there as well. I think that is also very important. So two parts to this. I think data, leveraging that data, and also automating things so that you don't have to do this manually each and every time.
But it's also important to know the context of automation. If it's often repeated queries, something which you can address on a regular basis, that you automate, and the human touch you leave for value-added services. Perfect. Before I come to the last question, Vanda, your thoughts on, we all talk about leveraging data, getting those insights, delivering value to customers. But let's not also forget that as enterprises, there are still many silos that operate. And the idea is to kind of break down those silos so that the organization works as a whole in delivering value to customers. Because if we are talking about reliability, if we are talking about trust, delivering that brand promise to customer, the organization has to appear as one face. So how do you break down silos?
It's difficult. I mean to say, there are so many functions in the organization. There's tech, there's delivery, there's production, there's marketing. How do you actually weave it together? I think one thing which has worked for us is actually consumer centricity. There is a consumer at the center, and you have to deliver a great experience. With that in mind, how each and every function contributes to it is what we actually work towards. And how you go about it is actually sharing metrics. For example, there's a revenue number, right? That is broken down into, say, acquisition, retention. Then you break it down into, the category you're selling, AOV, etc. How you actually take these numbers across the organization, whether it is pure numbers or whether you break it down into projects which will actually improve these numbers, and every function actually has to own this. If every function doesn't own this, then you're actually working in silos. So I think having a framework like an OKR system, for example, and also daily tracking really breaks this down into execution and ownership.
All right. Tapan, let me come to you for the last word. So considering, Clever Taps works with, I think, 10,000 plus apps globally. According to you, what are marketers doing right in their retention strategy? and what needs to be improved. Your last word on the best practices aspect of retaining customers.
I'll start with a story. So earlier this month I was in one of my Southeast Asia's super app customers. So we were just looking at the dashboard, and there in a week or so their app had opened 100 million times, and they were running 30,000 campaigns, and there were 1,000 segments,
Okay.
and I was looking at it, and then there were more than 1,000 journeys. For example, somebody who accepted this promo last 3 times and is in this location and uses this function. That is the starting of the journey. How to move that customer to a different journey, or how to. And I was looking at the scale, and I was looking at us humans, that the formidability of the scale. One thing wrong, you are at a scale of 100 million app opens. So the very word which came to me is, which you've said just, is hyper personalization at scale. For every brand, for every user, like he's consuming terabytes of data every day. For every user, it's their brand. The brand is for them. And how you can do hyper personalization at scale for every user. And it is not possible to build so many products, but then you have to, and there is terabytes and terabytes of data. We do more than 1 trillion notifications every month. Now you have to sum it up into insights, patterns, and to be able to come up with lenses, that this is the lens you need to use at a certain scale and it will impact everyone. And to be able to humanly do it with the best set of tools, without, as just Vinda said, and I was just admiring what you said, that there's a common feeling, and there are various functions, and there's an input metric and an output metric, and it has to be stitched together in an OKR like a waterfall, and that's how you function. So in the same way, the core objective of the digital business, you have to stitch it into the lens, and then go ahead with the flow. So
I guess you could say you have to enable a perspective so that you
with
can
the right technology. For example, I just said that earlier, that if there are various teams, let's say somebody is generating data, but other person is, let's say, waiting for 2 days to get that data to start a campaign, and then the other person is waiting for Saturday, Sunday to get over to start engagement on, say, 10 different channels, you are totally out of context. The customer needed it then, there. Are you there with the right promo to be able to consume it?
Well, I'm excited to look forward to what happens with brands now. As a demanding customer, how will brands service me? Let's see, the emperor's new groove, the customer as the new king, how they, or queen, how they manage their relationships with the brands. So on that note, we'll wrap up this special presentation. Tapan, you have something to say before
Yes,
we
I
wrap
want to
up?
thank you, Gautam. Fantastic questions. You kept us on the toes.
I hope I did.
Thank you very much.
Let's judge from the audience applause. All right. Fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone. On that note, I'd like to invite the host back onto the stage.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for being a fantastic audience. And I'm sure it was a very insightful and a very educational session. And there was a lot of value that we are driving home with this roadshow. And we are hoping that we see you at our next roadshow. Having said that, we'd like to now open the dinner and cocktail, which is being served in the pre-function area. Also, we would request everybody in the audience to please fill out the feedback form, which is kept at the registration desk, and do collect your goodies. With that, it's a good night from my side. Have a great evening ahead.